Now I'm ready. Okay. Leslie and Austin, take it away. You need to have me do anything so you can share the screen?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the article that we're going over is 7 ways to fail big. Okay, so the first 7 ways to fail big. So it basically covers what companies or the 7 most popular risky strategies that companies use and fail with. So the first strategy is the synergy mirage. And the synergy mirage is a perception that a brand extension or corporate expansion offers great profit potential, when in fact the opposite is true. So the goal of that is to leverage more sales across a fixed asset base. And an example of this is a merger with 2 disability insurers called Unum and Provident. And the merger ended up producing higher prices for everyone and had an aggressive posture towards denying claims, which eventually provoked a series of lawsuits that ruined their reputation and finances. And then the second strategy is the faulty financial engineering. So that's aggressive financial practices that don't necessarily lead to fraud, but they can be very dicey for the company. The stakes are very high, and brands and reputations and even entire businesses can crumble as a consequence. And corporate officers may be exposed to massive fines or even be put in prison. An example of this is two companies, Green Tea and Conseco Illuminate. They had two problems with financial engineering strategies. So first, they were producing flawed products such as easy credit mortgages for RV, like trailer homes, that attracted customers in the short term, but it exposed both the buyer and the seller to excessive risk over time. And then they encouraged further hopelessly optimistic borrowing to finance more investments. And then the third strategy is stubbornly staying the course. The company is stubbornly staying the course. So executives often kid themselves into thinking that there isn't a problem that's severe, or they delay a reaction until it's too late. So an example of this is Kodak and getting into digital technology. So they fought really hard against, and they didn't think that the world would change from printed images. So it took them a while to offer digital technology for their customers. And over the past decade, they've lost 75% of their market share. And as of 2007, the company had fewer than 1/3 of the number of employees it had 10 years earlier. And then the next strategy is pseudo adjacencies. And this is adjacent market strategies that attempt to build on core organizational strengths to expand into a related business by selling new products to existing customers or existing products to new customers or through new channels. An example of this is Avon trying to move into the healthcare industry. It didn't do well, and they had significant losses, and they ended up losing a total of $545 million to just dismantle the healthcare business. So adjacency strategies tended to flop when a company overestimated its hold on customers. Just because people were buying one service, it doesn't mean that they can sell like another service and do well with that. And then Austin will be taking over from here.
All right, so another way that companies fail big is by doing bets on the wrong technology. A lot of companies lie to themselves thinking that their product will work without taking advice from higher ups or other people in the industry. An example of this is when Motorola created the Iridium satellite telephone, but didn't take into account that their product had the same issues as the other phones of the 1980s. Also, although the phone was smaller, the price was still sky high and not worth it for potential customers. Another example of this is with Federal Express, also known as FedEx, investing in a service called Zap Mail that would have their workers pick up documents from customers to take to a processing center to have them faxed where they needed to go. Not many companies had fax machines at the time because of the price. As they got cheaper, everyone started buying them, and there's no need for FedEx to be the middleman. Another strategy is rushing to consolidate. Some companies try and buy their successful companies without doing their proper research so that they can grow their company and compete with their superior competitors. The article provided an example of this with Ames department stores when they tried hard to compete with Walmart and they purchased G.C. Murphy. They suffered a massive amount of theft by their workers because they didn't have a proper way to check their inventory. This resulted in Ames losing about $20 million of merchandise. While the theft occurred, they also overpaid to purchase Zayre for $800 million, which caused Ames to file for bankruptcy. They eventually recovered, but did the same mistake when trying to buy Hills department stores, which led them to filing for bankruptcy again in 2000 and being liquidated in 2002. And the last strategy that the article discussed was roll-ups of almost any kind. The idea behind roll-ups is to take dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of small businesses and combine them into a large one with increased purchasing power, greater brand recognition, lower capital costs, and more effective advertising. Research shows that more than 2/3 of roll-ups have failed to create any value for investors, and they usually cannot sustain their fast rate of acquisition. The example that the article provided was with Low End Group. when they purchased up to 266 different funeral homes in the United States and Canada. Investors seem to be enthusiastic about the rise of the company because of the projected golden era of death because of all the baby boomers eventually passing away. Unfortunately for them, a national brand doesn't do well in the funeral home industry because many of their customers tend to buy based on referrals and what is perceived as the local neighborhood business. The golden era of death that Lowen was banking on never happened, and it caused them to have to file for bankruptcy after turning down an attractive bid. The company eventually relaunched and was sold to the same bidder for a much cheaper price. And that's that.
Yeah, I get quite disturbed when you start talking about that golden age of death. For people in my age group, that's not a very inviting thing to be thinking about.
No, definitely not.
So I'm glad that didn't all come to pass.
Yeah.
So, okay, you hit there a variety of different things, 7 different things. What I'd like to know, if you can pick this out, in one of those, in any one of those, what was well, do you know anything about Green Tree Financial, Leslie, from what you read in there?
Not like it's not too much. Basically, they were giving mortgages out to people on trailer homes.
And
And
what's the flaw? What's the fatal flaw in that? They were
that purchasing a mobile home, it depreciates a lot faster versus
okay, they were writing 30-year mortgages on those.
yeah. So
If
by
you-
the time they people would eventually default on the loans because there was no point in paying them at
It
that.
was effectively what they, by the time they got halfway through their 30 years, all they had was kindling. There was not going to be anything that they could really use.
Yeah.
And if you take a 30-year loan at the end of 15 years, you still owe about 85% of what you originally borrowed. And as I said, the proceeds were kindling. By Iridium, do you know anything about Iridium, Austin?
Just what I read in the article.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna, if you are interested in this, and I don't know whether you are or not, but there's a book out called Eccentric Orbits. And what they did with their system is they put up satellites, and you could use to make the phone call, but in order to make connection, you had to lean your head out the window because they couldn't send the signals through the roof of the house, that's a limiting factor. Where it has value is somebody that can't get that is really remote, specifically somebody on a submarine. When they come up to the surface, there's no line of sight connection, which we have to have for our cell phones. Or if you're in the middle of the Antarctic, there's no way to connect. They don't have any cell towers down in Antarctica. And so this is where the value lay. When that company went bankrupt, they tried for a long time to get the right to bring down their satellites, to blow them out of the sky. They had a system where they had a bomb on the satellite so that when it did fall back to Earth, there was no chance of it landing as a solid thing. They wanted to be burned up by the atmosphere. So they had a device to make it explosive. And they couldn't get permission to do it. And finally, just about 3 years ago, someone bought that company out of bankruptcy after it lingered in there for probably a decade. And they use this for government, where it has very high value today for the very kinds of things that I said. Somebody in Antarctica, somebody on a submarine, somebody in the middle of a deep, dark jungle in Africa or up in Afghanistan. So there was a value. They were just on the wrong side of the marketplace with it. And Motorola was a truly great company before they went down the tubes with this thing. They were the first company to come up with car radios. And the guy who was the inventor of it was a man named Bill Lear. And he subsequently left Motorola after they had radios in cars and started another company called Learjet. a very creative guy. But that was not part of their failure there. So what I want to do, thank you for that. What I want to do now is pick up kind of where we left off. And I have got a film I'm going to show you that's going to take 37 minutes. So I'm going to talk real quick. What we had been doing over the last 2.5 weeks is looking at Porter's ideas on a substitute for SWOT. And specifically, he said, if you were to go in and do an analysis of the forces that are forcing down profits, the 5 forces, and do an analysis of how every industry, how every member of an industry tends to work, and they tend to all work pretty much the same way in terms of the way they approach the market. And if you were to use those kinds of things, you could begin to develop a strategy or a vision for yourself, and could get to where you could put together a strategy that was, well, he said there were 5 tests of an excellent strategy. That's what we looked at the last time. Having done this, we now want to go back to my original pyramid of strategy, because the section that we had was in the area between mission and vision. And so I'm going to pick it up right there with this this presentation I have. What I had done last year, at just about this time in the semester, my grandson was getting married and I wanted to be able to attend his wedding. And so since I knew I wouldn't be there for that class, I recorded the lecture for the day. And it's a good one. I did a good job with it. So that's what I'm going to present to you. And there I am. Well, let's go. This is not what I'm looking for. So I hope you'll have that along a timeline with our pyramid of strategy. And as we move from the level of vision to a strategy, we will use goals and objectives. And this talk, as I say, is primarily about objectives. And this comes out of chapter 8 or chapter 9 of Drucker's management book. And this, of course, is the book that you have access to for free as a download. So I hope you'll have that available to you. We have our pyramid of strategy, and we have started by looking at the lowest level, and that is at core values, but it's foundational to everything else. And I've stressed the importance in my life of core values as one of the real key things in a successful business operation. From there, we began to look at mission, which was a statement of what the company is currently doing. And of course, that's a statement of what the company is doing from the outsider's perspective rather than from the insider's perspective. This will lead us to developing a vision. And just as the mission is what we're currently doing, the vision is what we understand the customers want us to be doing. We went through a variety of different things with Michael Porter, looking at how he would assemble the data to make a vision. But from that, where we're going to go is to come back from Drucker, or from Porter to Drucker, and look at the higher levels. And the first of those is goals. As we're developing a vision, we have to set some long-term goals. And we define a goal in this case as something that's going to take more than a year to achieve. It's going to require, it's going to be a stretch effort for everyone in the organization. To achieve those goals, we use objectives. And these are kind of bite-sized chunks out of the goal, so that by achieving those objectives, we can move our way toward the ultimate reaching of the company's vision.
in order to have effective objectives, which are generally short-term, a year or less, what we will be using is a written plan, and that here we're going to call it a strategy. So while this is the pyramid of strategy that begins with the president articulating the overall direction that he wants to take the company, it'll ultimately be written or documented in addition to from his office. It'll be documented down at the lowest level of the operations people in the company. So to get strategy at all levels, what we have to do is we have to set goals, which are defined as something that's long-term. Define the objectives. These are the things that will allow us in cumulatively to move toward achieving our goal. Develop strategy statements for each of those objectives, and then document that. And this is with our operational plans and policies. So at the level that we're talking about, the highest on the pyramid, but down at the lowest level where things are done, strategy is a written plan. So this part of our time together is to begin by looking at the goals that the objectives will ultimately support. And establishing goals is a big deal. This is something where what you're looking for is something that can be accomplished over a period of time, perhaps a decade, perhaps an entire generation. And we just don't know how to do it. It's got to be big enough to be a motivator and not a demotivator. And it should be a target for, as I said, a decade or a generation. And you notice that timeline over there, July 24th, 1969. That was the day that we returned a man safely from the moon. And this was the culmination of a goal that had been set about 8 or 9 years before. John Kennedy, the president, spoke, I can't remember whether it was at Baylor or at LSU, in September of 1962. We were feeling the challenge of the Soviet Union, who were very good at doing a lot of the technological things with respect to space. They'd already launched the original satellite called Sputnik, which was something about the size of a grapefruit, but that sent out messages, pings, to ground stations on Earth and really excited everybody on the planet. But Kennedy was determined to catch up and move ahead, and so he set the goal of sending a man to the moon, a group of men as it turned out, to the moon and returning them safely before the decade was out. And his statement was this, this is part of his talk. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because this goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. Now, I was a sophomore in college when he made that speech, and I will guarantee you it energized everybody in the country. It was something that was a goal that was worthy of our nation. And as a sophomore in college, I looked around to the young people I knew that were going in various directions with their college career, and saw a lot of them made the decision right then to change their career goals and move into engineering, because they knew this could be part of reaching that goal. We finally did reach it in July, I believe it was July the 20th, they landed on the moon. But I used the 24th date because the whole goal was to get them to the moon and back again, and they arrived back on Earth in July the 24th. So when you achieve this goal, there was a tremendous letdown because we'd accomplished it. And when you do achieve a goal of that magnitude, you have to set another even higher goal. So I don't know whether you have the excitement that I had in 1962 trying to reach that goal of getting to the moon. But we now have a goal for, I think it's 2024, to get to Mars with people, not with just satellites or pieces of equipment, but with an actual landing party. And I think as the time goes forward, this is a very worthy goal. But as I said, I'm not sure everyone has the same level of excitement about it as we had in that first launching to the moon. It was truly exciting. But that's the way we would like to have our goals. Now, you can't reach a goal all in one jump. It takes time, and it takes organizing your thoughts and movement toward that goal. And the thing that we do this by is by objectives. And this is a kind of a bite of a goal, a chunk of the goal. And this is ultimately derived from answering three questions. And these are Drucker's questions. What is our business? Or what our business is. That's the mission. That's defined by the mission. What it will be, and that's looking at it both from the present tense, but also what it will become if we do nothing. And then third, what it should be, and this is our vision. And so Drucker says that with objectives, what you're trying to do is get something that's operational, things that you can actually do. Now, I've indicated before that many companies write good strategic plans, but they never get communicated and they are executed very poorly. But here we have kind of a mini strategic objective, and this is something that we can organize our skills around to achieve. And you notice that I've got the little star up in the corner, which means that this is an important concept. So what Drucker says is if you've got an objective, it's capable of being converted into specific targets, that is, it's measurable, with a specific assignment, that's a person who's responsible for achieving it, and which is time binding. And this is something that I had stressed right from the beginning of our class, and it's very important to me in terms of my own personal management behavior, that an objective is time binding, that's the third item down there, measurable, the first item of the three, and has a person responsible who is uniquely assigned the responsibility to carry out that objective. Objectives are something that can be done in a short term, so it's something that is pretty easily measurable. And what we want to do is be able to organize around those three principles to make your objective operational. So this kind of organizational thinking allows us to do is to concentrate our resources and our efforts. And there you can see little puppies trying to help that little boy get up. Again, this is a very important concept because we want to make sure that we have the concentration of resources and efforts in moving in the direction we need to go. So for this reason, because they do require concentration of effort, they have to be selective rather than all-encompassing. Now, I have a personal flaw in the way I do things, that in spite of harping on the idea of being focused, I have a very scattered mind, and I tend to work on all kinds of different things simultaneously. And frankly, I don't accomplish many of them for that reason. But what I should be doing is to be selective in what I choose to do. And why is that? Because you never got enough resources to do everything. And that certainly includes my mind resources as well as the financial resources. And there you can see an empty pocket. So even though it requires that to achieve an objective that we focus our attention on it and be single-minded about it, there will be multiple objectives in a company. And that's because you got a variety of different needs and requirements that have to be balanced. And as you meet those requirements, as you take care of those needs, what you will be doing is supporting the overall corporate strategy. And that's because you have to make everything of these objectives complementary. And that is chapter 6 of the Porter book. The idea of fit, that everyone is a case of 1 + 1 = 3. If we set our objectives properly, we will be complementary, where the objectives, the several objectives that we may have in a department or a division, will all be supportive of one another, enhance one another, and also be supportive of the corporate strategic objective. Now, these are required in all areas that are critical to the survival of the business. And Drucker's very hot on this issue. And he calls these critical areas, he calls them key areas, and defines it as any area in a company which, if it were ignored for any period of time, will cause the business to fail. And this is the basis of what we call key results area that are used in management by objectives. And went the wrong way. So these are the key areas that Drucker considered, and he has 8 of them. And you notice I have an airplane cockpit there with the pilot and co-pilot looking at all the gears, gauges, pressure meters, and dials in the cockpit. And we know that they all have to be coordinated and work together in order for that plane to continue to fly right. The key areas that Drucker isolated are, and he did this incidentally in order of significance. The first one is marketing. And Drucker believes everything in a company or an organization is a focus and attuned to marketing. And he says that the second most important of his 8 key areas is innovation, which he said is really a subpart of marketing, or as dovetails with marketing, because it makes operational the definition of what the company should be. This is through the vision statement and the vision plan. What we're doing is using innovation to achieve that. And innovation is really anytime we make an investment in any place in our company, we're doing it for the objective of innovating. And we define the innovating as making things better and cheaper. The third element is human organization. And if you're not minding your P's and Q's, you won't have the people in place when the opportunity comes along. As I told you, my first job was with IBM, and back in 1966, going back to that time, when I was hired on, they planned to have me in training for 2 years, as they did with all of the other people they were bringing into their marketing organization. And so that meant they had to be doing their planning about 3 years, 2.5 years anyhow, ahead of the time they needed to have the people in place, because they had about a 6-month hiring process where they interviewed various candidates and made their decisions. So human organization is very important, not only for taking care of people in the company or the organization, but also in making sure that the ones who will be needed in the future as the organization grows are available as well. Next is financial resources. And that means either the cash on hand or the ability to get cash on hand by borrowing or financing through a stock offer. Let's see, there's number 5, and that's physical resources, and that's plant and equipment. Number 6 is productivity, how you put the pieces together. And number 7 is one that, bothers me a little bit, and that's social responsibility. And I do want to have you know that I'm not a hot on the trail of social responsibility. I think as employers and as companies that we do have a responsibility to our community, both in terms of the gifts that the company is able to make or the individuals are able to make out of their earnings. But also we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't damage the planet. But there are people now that are really hot on the social responsibility thing, talking about the 3 P's, triple bottom line. And although somebody reminded me the other day of what the items were, I know profit and planet are 2 of the 3, and I can't think of the third. This is becoming a big issue. And frankly, I'm out of step with my colleagues in this field and in private industry. So I just want you to know that. But I do believe that we do need to be responsible citizens. And I point out one thing that happened a number of years ago to prove this. There was a company called RKO General. And if any of you are familiar with downtown LA and down in the area where the City of Commerce is, there's a building that's now called, I believe it's called the Citadel. And it has a bunch of bas reliefs on it of Assyrian carvings that had been similar to those found in Nineveh, which is where today's Mosul is, and which was once a major city 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. That building was part of a company called Sampson Tire and Rubber. And it was very famous. As you drive up the freeway, you could see it there. The rubber tire and rubber company has been dismembered, but it was part of RKO General. And RKO General, in addition to having that building, also had 5 radio stations in the Midwest. Now, if you run a radio station, the only thing you need to be able to work is a license to have a particular frequency to broadcast on. And the only thing it takes to get that is a responsibility to the local community for doing what's in the best interest of the community. Well, RKO General did a poor job of meeting the needs of the community, and as a result, the FCC threatened to pull their license. When they failed to live up to that responsibility after being warned, the FCC pulled the license and a company went out of business because they had failed to honor their social responsibilities. Well, I got 7 items up there, but there's actually 8. And I want you to think for a minute what that 8th one could be. Well, I'm going to give it away to you. The 8th one is profit. When we started this course, I suspect if I asked you to actually write down what you thought the purpose of the business was, you would have said to make a profit. And here, this is number 8 on Drucker's list. And that's, of course, because he says the purpose of a business is to create and maintain a customer. And I hope that that's gotten through to you all, that really is the purpose. If we take care of the customer, the profits will come. But in this case, he calls it profit requirements. And the reason they are profit requirements is because this is the source of the funds to finance the other 7 activities. And if you can't generate enough profits to do that, you're going to have to scale down your key areas, your plans for those key areas. You got to cut the suit to fit the cloth. And if you can't get the adequate profits, what you'll have to do is make the company it can't move forward as quickly as it would like to. So let's go ahead. There's something else I want to say, but I can't remember what it is right this minute. Oh, yes, I remember now. Way back in the beginning of class, I showed you a slide that showed a bunch of barriers in front of a tunnel. And I said that Drucker had indicated that profit was a limiting factor on the growth of the business. And this shows this, that if not enough profit is required to do all the 7 other things, you'll be limited in your growth by the lack of profit. Now, in addition to look at these key areas, another thing that we have to consider as we're marshaling our resources and determining where we're going to use them is how do we concentrate our activities? And this deals with that question, what is our business? And when I say concentration, this is an idea that Clay Christensen talks about in the book that we'll be getting to very quickly. And that is that he looks at what a company says it's going to do. He can find out if they're sincere about it by how they allocate their resources, which is concentrating their activities. So consider how different companies have found different places in the marketplace to concentrate their resources. And a couple of these we either have or will be looking at. IKEA, they're very different from Ashley Furniture, and yet both of them are in the same business. And Porter would say, make sure you have a unique approach for your strategy. And each of these companies have developed a different way to reach their customer. Next time we're going to be talking about Blue Ocean Strategy. And Blue Ocean Strategy is based on this very idea that you are trying to move your company to an area where it doesn't have to compete directly with other companies in the industry. Or look at Target and Walmart. Somebody defined it the other day as Walmart is the low-cost provider for everybody that wants to buy their goods. Target is the low-cost provider with a little bit of flair. They're a little bit more upmarket, and they've each found a very successful niche to work in. Lowe's and Home Depot are both involved in home improvement. The difference is that Lowe's is built around to appeal to women because they've recognized that women are very important in making the decision on home improvements. Home Depot, by contrast, is primarily targeting toward contractors who are going to, and both companies have exactly the same products. It's just how they focus them in 2 different directions. Southwest and Emirates. Now, you probably don't know a lot about Emirates, but Emirates flies from LA, for example, to Dubai. And that's about a 17-hour flight, I believe. And they and Southwest have picked 2 different areas in which to work. During the 1990s, only 2 airlines out of the hundreds that were out there made money, Southwest and Emirates. Southwest sells a ticket from Ontario to Oakland, and if you get it at the right time, under right conditions, it's probably under $50. Emirates, flying from LA to Dubai on that 17-hour flight, the first class ticket's about $10,000. Each of them has found a place. They do not compete with one another by any means, but they each have found a place to work. Finally, you can look at Enterprise versus Avis and Hertz, and they have a distinctive proposition. Each has a distinctive proposition for their personal success, or the success of the enterprise. And since we'll be looking at that, I'm not going to say anything other than they're different, and you may begin to think about that as we move into that case. On the right-hand side there is Archimedes, and he had made the comment back 2,000 years ago that if you gave him a lever long enough, he could move the earth. And that's what these companies are intending to do, to move the earth in the direction that they've found that's unique and gives them the opportunity to make some money and service a customer. Now, Drucker would remind us that all elements of a business revolve around marketing and innovation, and therefore every one of those 8 key areas, as they are defined for purposes of setting up objectives, should have the flavor of marketing and innovation. So when the engineering department develops new products, just to give one example, they're not just doing engineering. What they're doing is looking at what the marketplace needs and then come back and develop the product that they want to meet that. When you have an objective, you're going to have some kind of a written plan for every function in the company, and that would be like marketing, finance, and operations at a minimum, plus a written plan for the individual who is doing his operation as well. And each of those strategy plans is going to be subordinate to the overall corporate objective or corporate strategy. I should use those words specifically as they're intended. It's the overall corporate strategy made up of a series of goals which are achieved by individual objectives. Now, in Porter's or Drucker's 8 things to be doing, profit or profit requirements is number 8. And because, as I said, the other objectives will define the minimum required profit. And that may be something that may be beyond the reach of the company. It can't make that much money. And it has to do 3 things. And this is a thing that I told you about in the beginning of the course, that your profits have to, the profits will serve the function of allowing you to grow. And they must be sufficient. These profits must be sufficient to attain the company's objective, and that means growth, to maintain the company's survival, and that is running the business as it's currently running, and to have the profit to pay for replacement of wasting assets. Now, in your Accounting 101, you learned about the concept of depreciation, that this is merely a bookkeeping entry that's supposed to simulate or give you an idea of how much a piece of equipment is worn down in the course of a year. Now, you might not be able to figure that out for a machine tool of some sort, but you know about it in the automobile, that when you drive it off the lot, it's worth 30% less or some number like that. And then after the end of a year, you know it's going to have a very predictable using up of its overall life value. We can drive that car, of course, long after it's, quote, fully depreciated, end quote, and it still will work for us, particularly if we take good care of it. But at some point, that thing gives out, and you've got to replace it. And that's true in the manufacturing the manufacturing or distribution business as well, that your equipment does have to be replaced. Just a rephrasing or reminding me of what I had said before, the amount required may be more than the company can be expected to earn, and therefore you have to consider cutting down the objective that you have into a smaller bite. Another way that Drucker says this, and he comes at this, I think, at least 4 times that I've read, and this is a rehash of what was just on the previous slide. It's the absolute necessity for the business enterprise to produce, at the very least, the profit required to cover its own future risks, that's growth, the profit required to enable it to stay in business, that's the business as it currently is, making sure you've got enough cash to run it, and the profit required to maintain intact the wealth-producing capacity of the resources, which is the purchase of equipment. That is a big star up there in the corner. and this is what you must be able to do in order to keep the business functioning. And that's going to lead me then to your personal performance plan. Because each of you, as you go into the business world, in whatever field you go into, need to have a personal strategic plan. And really, if you're hiring into a position as opposed to getting a job, the employer should provide you with a written plan of what it takes to get raises and to get promoted. If they don't have one for you, do it yourself and take it in and negotiate it with your employer. Whether it's dictated by the company or whether you take it to the employer directly. You want to make sure that you can get it agreed upon between you and your supervisor. Because this is the key to getting moved ahead. If you don't have it, you'll frequently be told, after the first year, we'll be able to move you forward. If there's no commitment, and at the end of the year, good luck. But if you have a written plan, it's something that you can go back and look at. It also gives you some idea of what is acceptable performance levels. And I think in every company, all supervisory and managerial personnel should have a personal performance plan. What it should involve is 2 or 3 specific areas that are specific for measurable improvement. And for me, in 1966, I had 3 specific measurable areas that I was responsible for. First was making quota. That's generating the revenue for the company. The second was to open new accounts because I got to look forward to the next year or the year after for the revenue for that period of time in the future. And the third one, which is kind of different, but it's certainly important, is to make sure I collected my accounts receivable. They needed to be sure that they would. You can't spend the money you don't have. And sometimes you have to remind your customers that they owe you some money. So the plan that you'll have would be weighted based on importance. And in my case, the most important thing was making that quota. It would be reviewed in 6 months or a year, and that's an appropriate time to accomplish something. And remember that this objective for you personally is time binding, quantifiable, that we would know that it was going to be a 6 or 12 month period, that it would be quantifiable, and that we'd be able to identify what was success, and it would have a person responsible, which in this case is you. And you could use this for promoting, for raises, for discipline, and firing. It's all part and parcel of that same thing we talked about way back when in core values. So this is a bag of gold up there in the corner, because I think that that is particularly important for your own personal financial health. Now, and actually there was one on the preceding slide as well. I said you would want to do 2 or 3 things because the mind can't think about more than 2 or 3 things at one time. So this is just something to remember. If you only have 1 to 3 objectives, your chances of success are that you will achieve all of them. If you've got 4 to 10 objectives, chances are you'll get about 2 of them. And if you have more than 10, you will be so scattered that you probably accomplish 0. So that's my thought on objectives, and I think it's a pretty good thing, pretty good rundown on that. But you can check me out by reading the Drucker book, chapter 8 or 9.
Okay. Let's see. We're all set to go home. Lucio, Anna, Samuel, and where's Breland? She's not here. She took off. Kevin, do you want to talk to me at some later point here?
Oh, I don't think so. I think my team will decide when to talk to you later.
Okay, well, that's what I mean. I can't do it now, but if you want to get a hold of me, I can give you some time.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Lucio, Samuel, and Anna, I want to talk with you for just a couple of minutes. And all the rest of you, go home and have a good evening. So Tyler and Doris, you have anything else that you need me for?
That's fine. Have a good night.
Okay, good. Thank you. Tyler, how about you? You're not out getting a sandwich, are you?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Are you, do you need me for anything right now?
No, we're good. Our team's good.
Okay, I want to talk to this one team here.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I sent you a, Anna, you're gonna have to tilt your screen up a little bit. All I can see is the hair on the top of your head. Well, you've got some. Mine's getting kind of thin. But I sent you a list of questions. And if you need more help, I would like to have those questions answered. They should give you a lot of insight. And I don't know where Breland is because she's the one that initiated all the conversations with me.
Yeah, I checked the email this morning, and we plan to find the answers, by tomorrow morning. So we plan gonna send the email to you, by tomorrow. Is that okay? Because
Yeah, and I would like to have you have the answers. I don't necessarily need anything in writing, although that would be helpful as well. But I want to talk to you personally about it because there's some things that you need to do if you're going to make progress with this game.
yes, for me, I've been looking through the answers for a couple questions so far, and we kind of like want to figure it out by ourselves first, and for sure we still need your help, but we would like just to figure out the answer by ourselves first, by looking through all the
That's-
report number.
Yeah, that's why I gave it to you in the form of a question because I want you to have to dig it out.
Yes, yeah, that's why we plan it to look through tonight, and by tomorrow we will submit the answer for you, and then maybe after that we can meet you one more times. Is that okay?
You're free to meet with me anytime. Now I'm going to be tied up most of tomorrow, but Saturday afternoon I'm available, and there will be times on Sunday that I'll be available as well. Monday I don't have any class. I don't have any classes.
Yeah, that would be great. So is anything that we need to catch up with you, we're gonna give you the time like on either Saturday and Sunday, like you said.
Saturday afternoon and hit and miss on Sunday.
Okay, sounds good for us.
That sounds good.
So you're okay?
Yes. So by tomorrow, we're gonna give you the answer.
Okay, Lucio, how about you? You okay with this?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. And Samuel, I know you are. So if that's it, that's all I wanted to talk to you about.
Thank you so much.
So the recording for this class will be available on Blackboard because as I said in chat, my Wi-Fi suddenly went down.